June 21, 2000, the day Worldcom stock surged past $70 per share, a record for any telecom at the time, and the world watched as a humble regional carrier transformed into the third-largest long-distance provider on the planet. In the span of a decade, the company would climb from a modest $300 million in revenue to a staggering $100 billion, only to implode in 2002 under the weight of an $11 billion accounting fraud that dwarfed even Enron's infamous collapse. Worldcom began as long-distance discount services, a scrappy startup founded in 1983 by a young entrepreneur named Bernard Ebbers in the basement of a Mississippi motel. Ebbers, a charismatic leader with a knack for forging personal relationships, sold his vision to small businesses that were tired of paying premium rates to the big three telephone companies. By the late 1980s, the company had grown enough to go public, and Ebbers seized the moment, renaming it Worldcom and positioning it as a challenger to the industry giants. The 1990s were a period of relentless expansion. Worldcom pursued an aggressive acquisition strategy, buying up rivals at a breakneck pace. In 1995, the company acquired MFS Communications, adding fiber optic infrastructure and a foothold in the burgeoning internet market. 2 years later, a $2.2 billion purchase of U.S. West's long-distance business vaulted Worldcom into the upper echelons of telecom. But the true turning point came in 1998, when Worldcom announced a $10 billion hostile takeover of Mackay, the second-largest long-distance carrier in the United States. The merger, completed in 1999, created a behemoth with 45 million customers, a global network, and a market valuation that seemed untouchable. The meteoric rise, however, was built on shaky foundations. Wall Street's obsession with growth at any cost fed Worldcom's appetite for ever larger revenue numbers. The company's financial statements began to show red flags that many analysts brushed aside as typical tech sector volatility. In early 2000, Worldcom reported a $1.4 billion gain from the sale of a non-core division, a figure that seemed unusually high for a company whose core business was still struggling to keep pace with the dot-com bust. Simultaneously, internal memos hinted at mounting pressure on the finance team to meet analyst expectations. The CFO, Scott Sullivan, a former accounting professor, was tasked with making the numbers look right without violating any laws, a vague directive that would later become a euphemism for systematic fraud. The warning signs grew louder as the new millennium unfolded. In 2001, Worldcom's operating cash flow began to diverge sharply from its reported earnings. While the income statement showed steady profits, the cash flow statement revealed that the company was borrowing heavily to fund its own operations. Analysts noticed that capital expenditures were being understated, and that the company was classifying routine operating costs as capital investments, an accounting trick that spreads expenses over years instead of recognizing them immediately. The practice, known as capitalizing line costs, inflated earnings by billions of dollars each quarter. Employees in the finance department whispered about the adjustments being made to the books. An internal audit team, led by a diligent junior accountant named Cynthia Cooper, started to see a pattern. Every quarter, a mysterious adjustment entry appeared, shifting $3 million to $5 million from line cost expense to capital asset. Cooper, who had previously uncovered the $1.5 billion fraud at a different firm, grew suspicious. She began digging deeper, cross-checking invoices, and soon discovered that the adjustments were not isolated incidents but a coordinated effort that stretched back to at least 1999. The collapse came on June 26, 2002, when Worldcom announced an $11 billion reduction in its earnings, an adjustment that turned a $4.2 billion profit into a $7.8 billion loss. The announcement sent shockwaves through the markets. the Dow Jones plummeted, and Worldcom stock tumbled from its peak of $64 to under $1 within weeks. The Securities and Exchange Commission swooped in, issuing a subpoena for the company's books, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation launched a criminal investigation. Bernard Ebbers, the towering figure who had once been hailed as a visionary, was forced to step down. He faced 25 years in federal prison for securities fraud, conspiracy, and filing false statements. Scott Sullivan, the finance chief who had orchestrated the capital cost manipulation, pleaded guilty to fraud and received an 8-year sentence. Cynthia Cooper, the whistleblower, emerged as a reluctant hero, her meticulous work exposing one of the largest accounting scandals in American history. The aftermath rippled far beyond the boardroom. Thousands of employees lost their jobs, and countless retirees saw their 401k savings evaporate as Worldcom stock became worthless. The bankruptcy filing, the largest in U.S. history at the time, forced creditors to write off billions of dollars. The scandal prompted a wave of regulatory reforms, most notably the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002, which imposed stricter accounting standards, required CEOs and CFOs to certify the accuracy of financial statements, and created the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board to oversee auditors. Investors learned a harsh lesson about the perils of blind optimism. The Worldcom debacle demonstrated that growth fueled by aggressive acquisitions and opaque accounting can masquerade as success, but ultimately erodes the very foundations of a business. It also underscored the importance of corporate governance, internal controls, and the courage of individuals like Cooper who are willing to confront powerful institutions. Today, the remnants of Worldcom live on in the form of Mackay, which was eventually absorbed by Verizon. Subscribe to The Collapse for more stories like this.